Hey, this is Benjamin Boyce, and I hope you're doing well. I want to read to you today from The Seven Circles of Whiteness, created by Alicia McGollogh, MS LCMHCA NCC, and edited by Jarden Dogan, MEDEDS NCC. Overview. The Seven Circles of Whiteness is a learning tool that puts a name to the myriad of ways that whiteness exists as a construct in American culture by highlighting specific behaviors and thinking patterns associated with each of the categories. The Seven Circles of Whiteness also explores the overlap within the way that whiteness exists. This learning tool uses the concept of a circle. To represent the duality of sequence and overlap that exist within whiteness, which helps to unbind rigidity around the way that whiteness has historically been defined. I love the concept of a circle. Okay, the Seven Circles of Whiteness explores both the covert and overt ways that racism presents and ends with the caveat that anti-racism is not a destination, but a continuous journey of learning and unlearning. The purpose of the Seven Circles of Whiteness tool is to provide language for the different ways that whiteness exists, promote self-reflection for white people, and defining what anti-racist allyship can look like. This tool also brings more conscious awareness to behaviors that capital B Black, capital I Indigenous, capital P people of capital C color are experiencing by naming and validating those experiences through a visual graphic that, once again, is based on the concept of a circle. Here are the goals. To provide language that helps people acknowledge and describe the different ways that whiteness exists in American culture while offering concrete behaviors and thinking patterns associated with each category of whiteness. Who the heck edited this? Jarden, you are failure. To bring more consciousness to, okay, and then they just repeat themselves. So I'm going to jump down to these seven circles of whiteness. Image description. The content below features slides that are formatted on a white background that are separated into 7 categories, starting from top to bottom. It starts with the very, very bad people, and then it pushes you further and further and further into a complete convert, a radical activist. That's what this is. This is a whirlpool, a siphon of you and your caring into a circle of profound extremist do-gooding, lifelong learning, as they call it. So Circle 1 is filled with these different assignations. Brutal violence against Black bodies, racist and derogatory slurs. So violence and language are put on the same basic platform. White nationalism, white separatism, actively targeting Black bodies, police brutality, lynchings, hate crimes, alt-right, most likely to be seen with a gun in a public location. So somebody who has an open carry permit is a white terrorist, i.e. a restaurant or their kid's birthday party. What? MAGA, Make America Great Again. Intimidation tactics. This is filled with intimidation tactics. Confederate flags. Rigid patriotism. Anti-take a knee. Oh, so if you don't bow... If you don't bow, you are a white terrorist. Wow. Blue Lives Matter. So if you're for the cops, you are a white terrorist. KKK, same thing as a MAGA. If you're KKK, you're MAGA. And if you're an open carry person, you're KKK. This is all together. Funders and supporters of the prison industrial complex uses white evangelical rhetoric to justify racism. Okay, so that's the outermost out group. Let's move towards the center, where we all should be. Circle 2, the post-racial believers, talks about racial tolerance, So one step away from the KKK is talking about having tolerance for race. Quote, I have black neighbors. So somebody who doesn't mind living with black people is one step removed from the KKK. Using language such as colored to describe black people in the US. So the language is always shifting. This is a major problem with the left, and they're going to have to sort this out, or else they're just going to completely undermine their entire movement. They constantly shift the language. If you look at the way that we are supposed to refer to black Americans, it was Negro, and then it was colored, and then it was black, and then it went from black to African American. Now it's back to black. And I've seen commented, and it might be the case, that whenever a conservative group takes up a word, it automatically becomes offensive to the activist group. So they have to change the word to remove themselves, to try to push conservatives out of the conversation, to always be able to call conservatives offensive. They change the language. So these language games can only persist so far. It eventually starts to fracture the entire group, unless they all congregate on offense of their enemy. So maybe in a certain respect, deeming something newly offensive is a way to congregate everybody, but you're still building your movement out of offense, which is a weak stance. You're entirely weak. You're not creating anything. You're just toppling statues. And like I've said, I have no respect for those who topple. All you are is an accessory to gravity. You're not actually doing anything that nature doesn't do itself. To continue. Bootstrap theory, folks. Believing in meritocracy, believing in self-ownership, and doing everything you can to maximize what you're given, that is one step removed from the KKK. Uses terms like boy to describe grown black men. Expects black women to be the mammy. Ouch. Never feel safe around black people. I don't see color. Wow. Obama fixed it. What? Believers of the American dream. So even the pursuit of the American ideal of freedom and justice for all is one step removed from the KKK. They're really creating a very small circle that is the righteous path by completely distancing themselves from people who basically have a different view than them. So I guess hopefully they'll get to the positive view that they believe in. To continue with the circle to the post-racial believers, constantly downplays black excellence and uses the affirmative action card. White Eurocentric Christianity values. We are all the same in the eyes of God. Believing that we are all the same in the eyes of God is one step removed from the KKK. So I guess if we invert that, then we are all different in the eyes of God. Some of us are better and some of us are worse in the eyes of God. Is that where they're trying to take us? And then by what metric are we supposed to evaluate who is better and worse in the eyes of God? Is it through excellence or is it through oppression? If it's based on oppression, then everybody's going to be racing towards grabbing as much oppression as possible, which is what they do. To continue, white women clutching their purse or locking their cars when a black person walks by. Victim blaming. Wait, hold on. They put those two things right next to each other. Okay. Superiority complex. Wait, hold on. These people definitely have a superiority complex. May have a multiracial person in the family. That is, they have whitewashed. So if you have somebody who is of a different race in your family and you all have the same culture, you're one step removed from the KKK. Expects black people to jump and do things like carry their groceries to the car. Who actually does that? Uncomfortable around topics of race and thinks that talking about race issues creates division. So if we put this all together, you're not supposed to think that we're all created equal in the eyes of God or that God loves us all equally, right? There's no higher ideal that equalizes everyone. And then if you hold that and then you see that somebody's actually creating division by saying that you can't find any sort of equality in the eyes of a highest ideal, if you notice that that's going to create division, that reinforces your outsideness of this system of circles, this concept of circles that Alicia has created. Let's jump to circle 3. The oblivious instigators. Cultural appropriation. Loves whitewashed black people. Fetishizes and sexualizes black men. It's okay to do it with women, I guess. White tears, fragility, microaggressions. Can I touch your hair? All lives matter, Reverse racism, that's in quotes. White saviorism plays devil's advocate and invalidates experiences of racism. Being skeptical puts you outside the circle. You basically have to accept everything. Never question whoever the leader is, I guess. If you trust yourself, you'll have to ask questions because yourself is going to question. So you can't trust yourself at all. You have to trust the person who's leading you into the inner circle. Social justice issues related to things that center what they are going through. So if you notice that an issue resonates with your life, like being poor, if you're a poor person and you notice that there's justice work that can happen across races that would benefit you all, you're no longer on the inner circle. That disqualifies you. Have no loyalty to Black people and will often sell you out if presented with the opportunity. Quote, if you say it nicer, I might listen. You are pushing me away. Tone policing. Well, this person's certainly going to tone police you. Quote, all white people are not bad. So you can't be in the inner circle if you think that all white people aren't bad. Elitism, entitlement. This is basically a push for elitism of belief and the entitlement that you will gain if you get into that inner circle. Calling the police because they do not feel comfortable. Thinks that biracial children excuse them from racism. Okay, wow. I am a good white person. Okay, so you can't notice that white people are good and you can't be good yourself. Big on authoritarianism, rule following. These are a bunch of rules that you're supposed to follow to the letter or else you'll get kicked out. Often uses the quote N word as a quote joke and calls you dramatic for getting upset about it. Feels entitled to Black bodies. Quote, I don't know why you're offended that I touched your hair. I knew it was coming without consent. It's just hair. Are people seriously going around and touching other people's hair constantly, or is that just one thing that they hang their hat on? Or their coiffure on? Circle 4, the needy ally, focused on getting anti-racism right. Perfectionism. So you're supposed to try as hard as possible to follow these rules, but you can't try as hard as possible to follow these rules. Read white fragility, but has not addressed their own. Quote, I am above other white people. White distancing to be an exception. Arrival at anti-racism mindset. So you can't even get there. If you get there, you're out of the circle. Bragging on the few times they fought back against racism in order to gain approval. Needing to center themselves in topics about race. Needing constant validation and emotional investment from Black people. So you're supposed to absolutely prostrate yourself and follow to the word, but you can't seek their approval. You just have to be in a constant state of suspension and malleableness and not questioning and not noticing anything. Okay. Often has white terrorist family members that they are struggling to change or convince. Wait, hold on. So if you have a family member that has any of the qualities above, from being a member of the KKK to believing that we're all equal in the eyes of God, having that family member puts you outside of the circle. So you have to sever that tie to your family as well. Co-opting the work of POC and trying to make it their own, i.e. white women and yoga. Can admit to holding privilege, but refuses to be held accountable. Again, you need to be in a constant state of being called out, but not seeking approval. Race-splaining. Considers the Trump election to be the epitome of when things got bad. Needs to collect Black friends. Tokenization. Good white ally mentality. So even having any form of whiteness, whatever that actually means, is a signifier that you're not yet in the inner circle. You're not even moving towards the inner circle. Considers the impulsive around racial justice often causes more harm. Will often vent to Black people about their frustrations with politics. Usually takes up a lot of space and leaves Black people emotionally exhausted and depleted. Circle 5. The passive-aggressive oppressor. White feminist. Values white research and experience over the lived experiences of Black people. So don't believe what the data says. Believe what you're told by the approved people. Divisive, and often tries to turn Black people and POC against each other. Manipulative. This is all manipulation. Intent versus impact. Not paying for Black labor. Abuses power to silence and control Black women, victimizes self when challenged around topics of race. So when you are in the midst of the struggle session, you cannot resist at all against it. Degrades Black people who don't agree with them. Goes back to an earlier point. Tokenizes POC and Black people. That was in another circle. White narcissism. No accountability and very skilled at deflecting, and gaslighting. This is a bunch of gaslighting. Loves whitewashed POC and Black people. Comes across like they get it. So don't even pretend that you know what you're doing. Have no confidence whatsoever, basically. Expert versus listener, learner mentality. Again, you know nothing. Your job is purely to listen and learn and parrot it back, and then stop parroting it when you are told to stop parroting it. Implements respectability politics. Does not value building trust and rapport, but expects it from Black people. Gatekeeper mentality. So you can't even notice that you are seeking the inner circle and anybody else is further or lesser along with you. Basically, that kills the ability for any white person to be an evangelist of this. Typically, the face for anti-racism in their social circles often loses the trust of Black people in their lives. I don't know how else you're going to lose trust of any kind of person if you practice this stuff. Circle 6, the do-gooder period. Can be invalidating and engage in silver lining talk. Well, at least let's look at the positives. Still supports harmful white people in their lives to maintain their social status and comfort, so sever everything. Listens to certain Black people, but still do not center trans and cis Black women. Okay, so there's a hierarchy within the hierarchy. Overcompensating in allyship. So don't go too far with your allyship. Be perfect. So you can't actually do anything if you believe in this. You can't do anything if you believe in this. Speaking on behalf of communities. All this is speaking on behalf of communities. Thinking they know what's best for a Black person or community. That's what these people think they are doing. Views Blackness as a monolith. This is what they're doing. May be complacent in issues that cause discomfort. So if you're not uncomfortable, you're complacent, and you should always be uncomfortable. Actually, I think it would take somebody with an incredible amount of stamina to be able to follow this to the letter. OMG, you are my Oprah or Michelle Obama. So don't praise your oppressor. Don't signal any sort of positive toward the person who's putting you through this. Uses political correctness, academia terminology. Intellectualizes our lived experiences so that it has more credibility. So don't help us at all. Plays up their marginalized identities to excuse their racism. Okay, so if you're poor, if you're a woman, if you're oppressed in any other intersectional way other than your whiteness, that's completely invalidated. Seeks approval and self-advancement. Okay, so don't even try to get into the inner circle. So they don't even want you. On circle 6, right before you reach heaven, you're rejected. You can't go any further. We're gatekeeping you. Well, we're saying you can't gatekeep yourself. Quote, you can always come to me, end quote, but does not have the tools to effectively support Black people. You've stripped them of all the tools. This person is really stupid. Sorry, probably really smart to be able to put all these words together and then hire somebody else to edit them for them who doesn't do a good editing job. Okay, circle 7. Oh, shoot. Hold on. Kitty's going to unplug my computer again. Okay, if you made it this far, we're finally at circle 7, the lifelong student. And this one appears to have the most words. So the most perfect ideal of the anti-racist white person is pays for all forms of labor performed by Black people, centers the most marginalized, actively engages in introspection and dismantling racism in themselves, addresses racism at every institutional and systemic level, basically sees racism everywhere, centers learning and research of Black people, especially those with the most marginalization. Again, I said, if you can't believe in meritocracy, if you can't believe in effort, you have to believe in oppression. So whoever is the most oppressed has the most authority, and it's not you. Knows that they never arrive, so it would be in a constant state of agitation, suspension, but doing all this work, but in the face of your oppressor, or in the face of your priestess, you need to suspend all work to listen to them. Honors Black liberation and healing, not imposing on Black time. Black people need to be in spaces without white people as often as possible. You can't even get inside the holiest of holies. You're on the outside of the holiest of holies, and every once in a while the priestess comes out and graces you with tools and causes you to, become agitated and then sends you forth. Strong understanding of racial trauma and their ancestral, historical, and current impact. Deals with white fragility with fellow white people. Listens and challenges white saviorism. Don't ever believe in yourself when you're doing this work. Believe in the work, though, but not in yourself. Accountability, changed behavior. So always be ready to be put through a struggle session and change your language as you are dictated to. And then pay for their time and leave them alone. Understands that reconciliation does not mean that you are allowed back in that person's life. Uses privilege to be key makers versus gatekeepers. What's a key maker versus a gatekeeper? Constantly unpacking white supremacy and challenging white culture without approval. Not expecting Black people to show up a certain way. Knowing their mere presence is harmful. Wow. This is truly for the most devoted masochist. And then the last point, understand that they will never fully be trusted by Black people, making peace with that. Does going through that step by step actually provide anything of use for anybody else? I don't know, but I'm sure that aspects of this are arranged in different ways by different anti-racist teachers. And if you notice that this is just a pattern that is vomited over and over and over again, hopefully somebody somewhere is further inoculated to this stuff and is able to resist this or notice it when it starts to creep into their group or institution, and to know that this stuff leads eventually to the prostration, the division of people into races, and then the prostration of certain races before the most marginalized. And that marginalization is not to be quantified or to be questioned, and does it actually produce anything for the rest of everybody else, or does it just drain resources? I would think that it just drains resources from the community. This is an anti-social construct and should be refuted to the best of each of ours ability. This is Benjamin Boyce signing off with a kitty video. Talk to you later. Bye.